Dorothy Jane Scott was a young single mother. She lived in Stanton, California. She was beautiful and kind, but darkness found her. It started subtly. Strange occurrences, unsettling feelings. Then, the phone calls began. A man's voice, filled with menace. He breathed heavily, he made threats. Dorothy was terrified. Her life, once ordinary, was now a waking nightmare. The calls became more frequent. The stalker's words dripped with obsession. He knew her routines. He described her car. He even mentioned her son. Fear became Dorothy's constant companion. It followed her everywhere. It whispered in her ear. It kept her awake at night. Dorothy reported the calls to the police. They offered little comfort. They dismissed it as a prank, a cruel joke. But Dorothy knew better. This was no joke. This was real terror. It was relentless. And it was closing in. The voice on the other end of the line was a constant torment. It slithered into Dorothy's life, poisoning her days and stealing her sleep. He called himself Gordo. His voice was a guttural rasp, sending chills down her spine. He spoke of unspeakable acts, of violence and pain. He claimed to be watching her, to know her every move. "You can't hide," he'd whisper. Each call chipped away at Dorothy's sanity. The police were no help. They told her to change her number, to ignore the calls. But the stalker always found her. He seemed to delight in her terror, in the knowledge that he held her life hostage. Dorothy tried to remain strong, for her son, for herself, but the fear was a relentless tide, threatening to pull her under. She knew she had to do something to fight back against the darkness that threatened to consume her. Dorothy refused to become a victim. She installed new locks. She took self-defense classes. She even changed her phone number, hoping to sever the lifeline the stalker had to her. She confided in her family and friends, seeking solace in their worried faces. Their support was a beacon of light in the encroaching darkness. But the stalker was always one step ahead. He knew about the new locks. He mocked her attempts at self-defense. He even called her at her parents' house, his voice dripping with malice. "You can't escape me," he hissed. Despite the terror, Dorothy refused to back down. She clung to hope, to the belief that she could outsmart her tormentor. She continued to live her life, albeit cautiously, refusing to let fear control her completely. She was determined to reclaim her life, to not let this monster win. Section 4. Vanished. The night terror claimed Dorothy Jane Scott, August 28, 1980. A seemingly ordinary day. Dorothy went to work. She was a secretary at a construction company. She was a dedicated employee, a ray of sunshine in the office, but that evening fear returned. A co-worker became ill. Dorothy, always compassionate, offered to drive him to the hospital. She dropped him off. She promised to return. She never did. Dorothy's car was found later in the hospital parking lot. The engine was still running, the headlights were on, but Dorothy was gone. Vanished. Fear turned to panic. Dorothy's family and friends knew something was terribly wrong. The police, finally taking notice, launched an investigation. But it was too late. Dorothy had disappeared into the night, leaving behind more questions than answers. Section 5. A mystery unbroken, silence, bones, and unanswered questions. 4 years. 4 agonizing years of silence. Then, a gruesome discovery. Dorothy's remains were found. In a remote area, near a campground. It was a scene of unimaginable horror. The years had erased any clues that might have identified her killer. The news sent shockwaves through the community. Hope turned to grief. Fear turned to anger. Who could have committed such a heinous act? The police investigated. They chased leads. But the case went cold. Dorothy's killer was never found. And then the calls began again. To Dorothy's mother, the same voice, the same chilling words. "What's it like knowing your daughter is dead?" The calls continue to this day, unanswered. A chilling reminder of a life stolen, a mystery unsolved, and a terror that refuses to die.